Welcome to The Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Michelle Vo. Michelle is a San Francisco Bay Area-based licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist who brings a rich social justice-oriented lens to her clinical practice and projects. With nearly a decade of experience spanning hospital systems and Silicon Valley tech environments, Michelle specializes in supporting first-generation adults navigating cultural identity, high-achieving professionals battling burnout, and women moving through the complexities of maternal mental health. As a founder of the Model Mindfulness Project, she is particularly dedicated to enhancing discussions on cultural awareness, clinical social work practice, workplace wellness, and more. Her advocacy extends to impactful media collaborations, including an NPR Bay Area KQED feature discussing the fall of Saigon and prioritizing generational trauma and healing. She further explores her passion for social work and its intersections on podcasts like Heard Business School, where she discusses building culturally responsive practices and the importance of authenticity in therapy. Her therapeutic approach is defined by a balance of warm humanity and clinical direction, using evidence-based tools such as CBT, DBT, and psychodynamic and narrative therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy to build lasting resilience. By blending professional expertise with tactful transparency and humor, Michelle creates a space where clients can move away from perfectionism and toward a life of radical self-acceptance and intentionality. Well, hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I'm incredibly honored and grateful that you're taking the time to share your story, journey, and expertise with me and my listeners. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, of course. Like I said, I'm really excited. So just starting off, I'd love to hear more about your own journey. So as a first-generation Asian American, what early experiences shaped how you understand care, survival, and community?
Yeah, I think early experiences that kind of shaped it. This is a great question. I think just observing like what it means to build the American dream that has been represented by my immigrant parents, either that be working multiple jobs, might be supporting their children or me and my brother in the way that they could. That might include taking us to school, but not really understanding all the in-between on what it's like to be a first-generation student and going to college and such. At times, it felt like survival. At times, when you're younger and you observe it, does feel like normal life until you get older and you observe what childhood experiences and what parents tried to protect you from. And that could be the experience of immigration during very war-torn times when they were kids, and also what it was like to assimilate and try to thrive and try to keep their head above water in a new country. I think about my parents. I also think about, as a first gen, doing what you can to make something of yourself and to be there for them too.
Yeah, no, I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. And so what led you to social work and psychotherapy specifically? I'd love to hear more about that journey for you.
Yeah. So for me, I've shared with you before, but I've always been interested in people.
I love that.
I was not very interested in numbers. So any type of technical role, I was like, no thanks, I'm probably not going to be good at that. But people has just kind of lifted my spirits and just like opened my perspectives a lot. And this started like in my teen years when I just knew that volunteering was fun. I didn't know what was fun about it, but over time I found the words. It was about community and connection. So being interested in people led me to take some pilot IB or AP classes in my high school. At that time, it was psychology. And that just coincided with a time that was quite challenging in my personal life, that I learned that oh, like psychology is really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Um, I never looked back since. I went to college, pursued psychology in the depth that I could, doing intensive classes, research,
Mm.
volunteering, talking to social workers and my professors. And that kind of just all combined with the interest of my immigration story, my parents' immigration story.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I think social work is what really calls to me, being able to
Yeah.
combine advocacy and um, community care, social justice, and then the clinical aspect, which is to meet people where they are to support them with any type of mental health or wellness journey.
Uh-huh. No, thank you for sharing that. And as I shared with you in our conversation before this too, so I was actually interested in going to psychology myself, but I went more into sociology to study more about like systemic issues and everything. But I think as I've grown older and learned more about the mental health field, I did see that connection between mental health and social justice. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. So, was there a moment when you realized that mental health work was also justice work?
Yeah, I never differentiated
Okay,
both, and I think that
that's
was kind of the
wonderful.
beauty of social work.
Hmm.
Um, I felt like they worked together, and I think that makes um, my work so meaningful. I
Uh-huh.
see mental health care from a trauma informed and cultural competency lens, so
Hmm.
that really shows up in how I bring up case consultations with other therapists or how I work with patients as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think this really just I think it was just so natural to me to see that
Hmm.
justice work meant to understand people's backgrounds and culture and why mental health struggles or of talking about emotions was difficult. And
Right.
in essence, it's like, oh, it's because it's therapy is more westernized. And, in Eastern countries, they don't really talk about mental
Hmm.
health or any type of depressive symptoms. They cope in this type of way. And it just kind of became so normal for me to
Right.
educate and to represent and embody that as a therapist and individual. Um,
Hmm.
so it was like no exact point, but it was something that I felt so steadfast
I
in.
love that. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I also wonder too, like in your time working in the mental health field, do you feel that like I think in particularly like API communities, like I felt like it was more individual for me, like just mental health was so stigmatized and even like taboo to talk about, at least when I was younger. But as I've grown older, I've seen that people, even older generations, are more open to seeking mental health services too, which I think is really amazing. But yeah, I was just wondering, have you noticed any shifts of how like, AAPI communities approach mental health or like, want to support those kind of services? Or not support, but seek those kind of services?
Yeah, I do think that in the last maybe like 5 to 6 years with the rise of telehealth options after COVID, it really
Okay.
makes seeing therapists much more accessible.
Mm,
So if your insurance is this and you want to see a middle-aged female therapist that is of your
okay.
culture, they could be down in SoCal and you can still
Okay.
see them. So I think that helps a lot. And
Okay.
with the internet being just so much, more focused on marketing and
Hmm.
people sharing their stories, I think it has been empowering for many different AAPI communities to seek care
Uh-huh.
because the discussions of mental health have been more prominent. There are specific registries or
Hmm.
agencies or clinics all around that want to be able to provide this support. Obviously,
Yeah.
California is a very diverse state that allows this to just happen more naturally, but I can also see this being more
Hmm.
difficult if folks are seeking a therapist in a state where not much diversity or limited therapists are available to offer this care.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I really love just like having more positive light on it. And even I think on Netflix, I think I watched a couple of shows that like were Asian based, like on either dramas or, just like opening mental health. Cause I think it was this show called Daily Dose of Sunshine, I believe. And it was really cool too, because it was just, it was talking about different like mental health diagnoses. So they would say something like bipolar and they'd write in the subtitles in like in parentheses, like, oh, this is what this means means. And so I'm just really glad to see that, because at least, like I was saying too, I don't know how it is now, but like it seems like it's more positive, because when I was younger, I was really, my parents, didn't want me to seek those services. And I think even now they feel like, because I want my daughter to also see a therapist. And I think my parents think like, oh, if she needs to see a therapist, that must be something is like really wrong with her. And I've been trying to tell her like, no, it's not that there's something wrong. It's more being proactive and it's okay. But I think just that mindset of like, oh, you don't see a therapist or mental health until things get really bad.
Yes, exactly. Asian Americans are typically seeking therapy when their symptoms are more severe. So
Right.
at that point,
Hmm.
treatment takes longer, or they might be struggling more, and it might
Hmm.
be harder to process and utilize coping skills to its full effect. And
Right.
I always educate my clients about that, about the
Uh-huh.
severity, and that it's normal to come in when it's really difficult, but that they can
Hmm.
always learn that they can come in whenever they want. And mental health is focused on, health, and that doesn't only mean mental illness.
Right,
You need
right.
to go see the PCP when you're very ill. You can go in for preventative
Uh-huh.
care, check-ins, but a general follow up on how things are going, or what some of these blind spots we may have are.
Hmm.
And that's the importance of mental health. It's like we can't assume that we're healthy. We have to work towards being healthy. How
Right,
can you work there if you don't know baseline, where you are,
right.
what your blind spots are, what you carry, what you're genetically
Hmm.
sensitive to as well?
Okay, great. No, thank you for sharing that. And just in your experience, how do intergenerational trauma and intergenerational resilience both show up in AAPI communities? Because that's another thing that I've learned, in college and just in my experience, like the AAPI like label is so broad with so many different cultures, so many different experiences. But yeah, I'd love to hear like how those intergenerational issues show up.
Yes. Um, I generationally, it has a huge influence on how someone learns
Mm-hmm.
their relationship with emotions and
Uh-huh.
how they communicate that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You may have heard the term like generational healing, right? Like the first to break
Right.
the cycle. And albeit it sounds like so amazing to break that cycle, but I also think that we're going to be imperfect breaking a cycle that has lived long before us.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Even maybe not even my parents' generation, but prior generations before that. And
Right.
there's so much pressure for folks to fix and heal, where I think what's really important is just to understand, okay, my generation before me didn't really talk about mental health, emotions. They really talk about how to
Right.
resolve conflict, or how to sit together and provide validation or be emotionally available. And I'm doing everything I could in this generation, and I'm not always going to get it right. But
Right.
dang, I'm giving it a pretty good shot. It shows up in all aspects, and sometimes it can be really triggering. Oh my God, I did that thing that my parents did, and I don't want to do that either.
Right.
And
Right.
a lot of that compassion needs to come when you're becoming much more aware of yourself, but also
Mhm.
generations prior to you. And I always assess for that in my conversations with clients, just like curious, from a curious perspective of, hey, like, what happened back then when this happened to you? Is there like something
Right.
that might be coming up for you, or it might be difficult when you're getting triggered in this area, in this time?
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
it shows up so often in healing. It is not just from, it's not only on one person to do. We do need that process to include professionals, friends, at
Right.
times family, if that's possible. But if not, trying to understand that sometimes we do the best we can, and that is enough. And maybe that was also enough generations before too.
Right. Right. No, thank you for sharing that. I really love that. And, how does social justice and mental health look like across different communities?
Yes, I think I think every family has its own culture about
Uh-huh.
emotions and
Mhm.
recovery. So I think that question can't be generalized.
Right.
But some
Mhm.
things that could be important is just to be a bit thoughtful of, the general themes of AAPI, and
Right.
how as a society, talking about emotions is deemed as weak and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's okay for the stranger to experience that. But when it comes to my family, someone
Right.
that represents an extension of me, that can't be talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes towards a lot of BIPOC communities, not just
Uh-huh.
Asian American communities.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to talk more about healing as well. So, what does healing make possible for movements? Like, how does healing, I know you spoke about this a little before, but I'd love to hear more about like how healing also relates to larger like social movements or collective healing.
Yeah, I do think that once someone is in the process of their healing journey or learning
Mm-hmm.
about what helps them feel more authentically themselves and more accepting of themselves, they get to think of themselves and
Um,
extend that care towards communities. And I think that allows people to show up for movements. I
mm-hmm.
want to be a part of a mission that's bigger than me. I want to be a part of something that advocates for those who are not able to advocate for themselves. And I think, in essence, as we heal ourselves or can show up for ourselves, we can make space to show up for others. Not in a
Right.
people pleasing way, but in a way of
Yeah.
that feels like we can do all of this work, but it's much more influential when we do it together.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. And I've shared this with you before, but I'd love to talk with you more about this too. So, when I was a very young professional, just entering to the professional world, I actually worked at Asian Americans for Community Involvement, or AKI, in San Jose. And since I worked there, I also learned about mental health, and I was going through a lot myself personally too. And I had their services in mental health, and I think it wasn't there until like I realized that cultural competency when it comes to mental health is so important because I've just thought, like I think my lived experience, I could think like, oh, it's just, my experience, but then realizing that, culture and everything comes into that. And, I think that was one of the few times that I actually felt like fully like myself, like having that cultural competency, really being able to talk about that. So, with that, what are some unique mental health challenges facing AAPI communities that often go unseen? And, why do you think cultural competency is so important too when it comes to mental health?
Yes, I think like what you shared, cultural competency is crucial because it helps us feel seen and safe.
Uh-huh.
And cultural competency is just like scratching the surface because
Hmm.
you can be competent, but you might not be representative of the community.
Right.
Um, as if you were going to a therapist that doesn't look like someone that feels safe,
Hmm.
maybe they might be curious and empathetic, but you have to explain yourself and your family's dynamics that you can't just cut them off.
Right.
That might feel exhausting. So
Hmm.
sometimes there, the cultural competency is very important, but the representation and sometimes even stepping ahead of the client and filling
Hmm.
in that space where they can't have the words to share is really necessary. And what that looks like in my practice is, I normalize, hey, like it's normal to feel nervous about setting boundaries to your parents, and sometimes setting boundaries is also not sharing what's going on for you because it's so emotionally exhausting, because
Hmm.
it's hard to share when someone's not receptive and then not in a space of hearing you.
Right.
So I believe that cultural competency is the kind of the surface of that, and then we want to meet with representation, and
Hmm.
then also allowing clients to share their discomfort of like,
Okay.
sometimes I feel nervous that, you're, a different culture or different
Hmm.
ethnicity. And there is a natural power dynamic to that.
Right.
Asian Americans are, Asians in general have been seen to be a much more submissive ethnic
Right.
group. You put your head
Hmm.
down, you do the work, you fit the model minority myth. Um,
Right.
so that shows up in power dynamics in medical settings, and especially in a vulnerable setting like
Hmm.
therapy too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And, I love that you actually bring that up to like model minority. That's another term I also learned while I was in college. But also, I think like when I was navigating the mental health system, I felt like I wasn't getting the help that I needed because of that model minority myth. I think just the assumptions that, Asian Americans are doing well. And I don't know, I just felt that. And I don't know, there's times when I was just like, it's just me. But like, I think as I've like learned more about like those microaggressions, how that shows up in,
Yeah.
yeah, just different places too. So I don't know, that's something that I also appreciated about, mental health services specifically for like Asian Americans or Asian American Pacific Islanders.
Yes.
And yeah, so I'm wondering, do you think that like cultural competency, like people seeking those supports, like they were more likely to seek mental health services because they felt like that kind of comfort versus maybe seeking other places where there are people who don't look like them? Do you think that played a part in like people seeking that kind of support that they needed?
Yeah, I do think that all therapists are capable of supporting people with their healing journey,
Right.
but maybe at times it depends on the depth of how that client needs
Hmm.
that care at that time. So
Right.
I've definitely had clients who have seen therapists from different cultures and ethnicities, or even in
Hmm.
an Asian ethnicity, but they didn't find a good fit because, like I said, the competency is one thing,
Right.
but the other thing is if they feel safe, if there's that rapport, if that journey for them to explore generational healing and also
Hmm.
their lived Asian experience is now present, then we can work on it. Because
Uh-huh.
I think in the beginning, if you're trying to scratch the surface of um, maybe anxiety or interpersonal issues in a
Hmm.
relationship, not everything is an Asian experience, too.
Right. Hmm.
So at times, I think clients who feel as though, wait, I think my Asian experience is coming out in my interrace
Right.
marriage. That's where, okay, well, let's explore that more.
Hmm.
Um, I do believe that someone's ethnicity and race um, and culture shapes their lived experience and mental health or their emotional well-being, but not
Right.
everyone does. And
Hmm.
that's okay. And I'll be ready for them when they are curious or want to be educated about it. But
Yeah.
I also need to meet people where they are too. So I feel really grateful into having the opportunity of educating when people are ready and being
Hmm.
curious when they're not ready to. But it
Yeah.
just helps me authentically show this is how I work and this is how I practice as a professional.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. And, next I'd love to talk with you about imposter syndrome. So, can you speak to imposter syndrome through a cultural lens?
Yes, I think imposter syndrome, its symptoms, what it looks like is thoughts of
Hmm.
self-doubt. Did I get lucky? Oh, someone was just having a good day and then they chose me for this
Uh-huh.
job, or I got into the school.
Right.
I think imposter syndrome shows up culturally, but also in many different types of experiences, including gender too.
Hmm.
Women in male dominated fields,
Right.
um, also like individuals who are looking for more management or executive positions with little representation of their race
Hmm.
or culture too. So I do think that it impacts everybody. It doesn't discriminate, and neither does mental health symptoms. But we want to be able to acknowledge, like, oh, why am I feeling a little bit of jitters in my chest when I enter this? Is there a quiet voice that I don't belong or I stick out like a sore thumb?
Right.
And to make space on, oh, is it because it's my first time doing this? Is it because I'm the first in my family? Is this because I've doubted this journey sometimes, even though I really
Hmm.
want it? Or if I'm figuring out as a first timer, this is a new experience, and to really validate that. So it happens
Yeah.
for I think a lot of folks, and I work with folks all around um, the Bay Area and the state of California from all different races and genders. And I see
Hmm.
imposter syndrome show up, and you just gotta really meet people where they are. It's like, where does this come from? Right? Like,
Right. Right. No, thank you for sharing that. I really love that. And, just in your experience, how do insurance systems, funding gaps, and access barriers shape who gets care?
Yes, I think it shapes who gets care and how care is given.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Insurance is definitely like a tricky situation for mental health services because oftentimes when you're using your insurance, you want to meet a level what they call medical necessity, and that also includes a diagnosis. And
Uh-huh.
not all mental health symptoms meet diagnosis.
Oh,
You may
okay.
exhibit symptoms and traits, but you might not fit a full blown diagnosis. And even
Mm-hmm.
if you meet a full blown diagnosis, boom, someone gets really stigmatized and they get really shameful about their experience because mental health is different than getting a diagnosis of diabetes.
Right.
So with that process of pathologizing human emotions and challenges is one big thing. And the other
Mm-hmm.
thing is, like you said, access. At the end of the day, a lot of services um, are they need to kind of abide by capitalism and making money. And that
Uh-huh.
can include getting people in for services, usually at the more hard times of their lives, and providing a sometimes one size fits all model.
Uh-huh.
Go to a certain group, go to this type of setting to learn about your symptoms, try these medications. And it could be a very westernized perspective on treating mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
that can take away that humanistic cultural competency, meeting people where they are at a pace that they are, because
Right.
everything in medical care can seem so so prescriptive. And
Mm-hmm.
mental health is not prescriptive. It can be educational, but it can't be prescriptive because sometimes you prescribe people medications and they're not ready for it. Guess what? They're
Right.
not going to take it.
Right.
And then how do you treat the symptoms, right?
Right.
So from what I've noticed of like treatment and services is that when people are, like you mentioned, having lower level symptoms, they fall through the cracks. They think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I can't get care. That means that's probably not bad enough. And I've actually had clients tell me,
Right.
well, I feel bad taking this lot because I'm doing better and maybe someone
Yeah.
else needs it because there's a model that curates this vision that you should only get care when you're very, very sick.
Right.
And that care looks different than someone who might have symptoms they want to be proactive on or to process and experience some healing when they're not at their highest state.
Mm-hmm.
So, backlogging, patients falling through their cracks, referrals, wait times, these are all things that contribute access to care.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. And, something that I want to do with this podcast too is like have show people like action steps that they could take, whatever issues that I'm, addressing in different episodes. So for with that, for someone listening who wants support but also feels overwhelmed, what's a small first step that they can take?
Yes. I just want to say the first step is take that deep breath in and say, okay,
Uh-huh.
this is going to take
Mm-hmm.
some time and it's going
Hmm.
to be overwhelming if it's my first time doing this. And that's normal.
Right.
I would encourage folks to review their benefits of
Mm-hmm.
what insurance can cover, or if they're willing to pay out of pocket, how much. And
Mm-hmm.
know that there's not just one option to go through your medical system. You can potentially pay out of pocket and potentially even get that reimbursed. And
Mm-hmm.
that just know that you have options. And sometimes when we're new to something, we get overwhelmed when we feel like there's only one option. There's multiple options, just
Mm-hmm.
taking that their time. So also commending them. Hey, like if you're looking for a therapist, great, good for you. You want to improve something, take your time with it. You don't have to rush, shop around, see your options, what's feasible for your schedule and your time, and take one
Mm-hmm.
step at a time, one call at a time. And that's good enough for now.
Yeah, no, I thank you for sharing that. I love that. And for example, like for me, when I knew that I wanted to seek therapy or mental health services, I had Kaiser and I just knew, oh, I just go through Kaiser and find someone. But, for someone who might not have that kind of insurance, how might they go about like finding a therapist or seeking
Yeah.
mental health services?
Yes. So even if you do have insurance or don't have insurance, it's important
Hmm.
to know what resources there are. So
Okay.
even let's say like Kaiser, sometimes there's very long wait times.
Right.
But there
Hmm.
are insurances that have something called an out of network benefit, which
Okay.
is basically saying that you can see a licensed provider,
Mhm.
pay out of pocket, and potentially get reimbursed. So check those benefits first. Let's say someone
Okay.
doesn't have insurance. The good thing about clinics and ACI and
Right.
community funded organization and clinics is that there are clinics that offer low fee therapist sessions,
Okay.
and just really searching in that community. So let's say like you're in a certain county, like maybe
Mhm.
Santa Clara County here, you want to be able to search Santa Clara County low cost mental health clinic. And maybe there could be some wait times, maybe there couldn't, but that's a good one to start, especially if you're trying to see in person. But as I said earlier, now that low cost uh, therapy or access can be anywhere around that state, you can even
Mhm.
see like maybe potentially a therapist providing sliding scale down in SoCal too.
Right.
So just doing that due diligence of taking your time and researching. And there's so many different clinics out there,
Okay.
and therapists willing to do sliding scale. And that's what I've done in the past too. It supports
Uh-huh.
clients going through challenging times or clients who have been recently paid off. And I can only do that with supportive clients who are paying out of pocket too. So at,
Okay.
overall, I find it a good balance to be able to show for a diverse amount of patients with different social and economic statuses and also
Mhm.
access.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that, though. That's really wonderful. And, I know we've spoken before about like people doing this work, it could be a lot as well. So, with that, social workers and therapists are often expected to hold so much while being undervalued. So, how do you yourself like navigate that kind of tension?
Yes. Tension is a great word. I used to
Okay.
get so much more tense
Uh-huh.
learning about social work and how it's supposed to be a thankless job.
Right.
I remember being an intern and someone just saying it's a thankless job, and I just felt so like frustrated. Like it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It should have never been.
No.
Maybe there were people who got in the field that had other financial supports, but I definitely did not. And I wanted to do fulfilling work, but I need to
Right.
fulfill myself. I have my family to support. I have generations to build here as
Hmm.
well. And how to navigate this tension is always to note that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Uh-huh.
And that because this field asks us a lot about sacrifice and self-sacrifice and low pay,
Hmm.
and at times really emotionally draining and physically sometimes unsafe positions, you have to think about what sustains you in this career. And for
Hmm.
me, what that looked like was to try everything. I tried nonprofits. I knew that wasn't for me. I tried hospitals and
Right.
I loved parts of it, but the
Okay.
other parts was really difficult. And really understanding like what fulfills me in this role is to know that I'm allowed to hold the dualities of supporting others while supporting myself. And the more that
Hmm.
I care for myself, the better I show up for patients. And that's at the end of the day most important for me. It's not about how many people I see, but the
Hmm.
depth of work I am able to do. And if that means maybe 300 people by the time I retire and they can
Okay.
remember my name or the things that we talked about,
That's
that's
wonderful.
meaningful for me.
No, I love that. And just how you bring up like thankless job too. So I work in nonprofit and I've heard that a lot in my field as well. And
Yeah.
we like my colleagues, we joke about that too. It's like we don't get thanked for the work like that we do, sometimes. But I think it's just like knowing that we're working towards building something better and more beautiful. And just knowing that like, yeah, it's just you're gonna put a lot of work sometimes and it's not gonna feel like, that thankless part I think definitely comes into. And I think yeah, I think just me knowing what I'm trying to do and trying to, build more community empowerment. But yeah, what helps you to get through those moments or, keep moving forward? I'd love to hear from you because yeah, I've definitely been there myself doing social change work too.
Yes. It's so draining to just have this like voice of it's a
Right.
thankless job. You're not going to get paid for it. No one's going to understand.
Yeah.
And I just try my best to understand that that's not the individual's a perspective, but it's like a societal perspective that we don't value people doing community work and helping
Definitely.
professionals. That
Mhm.
goes towards teachers and nurses and folks who do nonprofit work and so many other providers and service folks. And sometimes that means also female roles too, or quote unquote
Right.
pink jobs. And how do
Mm-hmm.
I fight that is that I don't try to undervalue myself.
Oh,
And at times that might mean people don't think it could bring up imposter syndrome, like, am I charging more than I should?
yeah,
Or am I
right,
asking more than I should? And then I try to think, well, would another person from a different race or a different gender ask that same question? Or is that question coming up because I feel as though I'm not fitting the bar? Um,
right.
and I try my best to provide validation to other helping professionals that our job is difficult. And if we want to do it well, we have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that we have to sustain ourselves and take good care. Because burnout is
Yeah,
so real. Social work jobs are
right,
um, so incredibly draining. We do
right.
such different diverse roles and at times feel at the bottom of a totem pole of power and change in the medical system too, but we're deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you keep your chin up to educate people what you're capable of doing, who are your peers, but
Right,
also continue to advocate for self care? And that might mean a different pay raise, moving to a different role, working different hours, taking your vacations. And for me,
right.
it's really about educating clients of my expertise,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm able to bring to the table, and not really settling for less. And most of the time, it works for me. I
Okay.
wouldn't say not not 50-50, but it does help me acknowledge that it's not a personal issue. It's more
Right,
a societal thing, and that also it puts empowerment on me to create a life that makes my work meaningful while I can still
right.
sustain how I can take care of myself.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And it just reminds me of something that I was taught. I don't know if I was in group therapy or something, but it's just like I found myself in burnout too and just overextending, giving a lot of myself. But image that really struck with me that, I still carry today, they say, like, think of yourself as a sponge. So you have to learn how to pour into yourself and, get yourself water again. Because if you keep like squeezing into people, you'll have no more water to squeeze. So it just
Yeah.
reminded me, especially like with this work, I feel like, we could literally be working 24/7 and not get everything done. So I'm like, if we still can't get everything done, we might as well still take care of ourselves so that we could stay in this in the long haul and, just not risk burnout. And yeah, I'm just hoping that we could pass that on to the younger generations coming into this work too, like taking care of themselves and teaching them how to avoid burnout so that they could keep doing this work.
Yes, yeah. And avoiding burnout is just something that's necessary for all fields because
Right.
capitalism
Mhm.
is always going to ask us to do more. And once you finish that, there's more to do. And
Right.
it's really acknowledging, like, who am I outside of the work that I offer
Right.
to society?
I love that.
What fulfills me outside of crunching numbers and staying productive? Because we start to
Mhm.
internalize that capitalism of the more productive, the more I do, the more worthy and valuable I am. And
Mhm.
inherently, how do you shift that to knowing I'm valuable and worthy outside of producing work, even if it's a
Right.
healthy profession? How do I
Mhm.
provide to myself and put that water into my sponge and feel full and maybe just sit with that before I start drenching and squeezing for others?
Right. Right. No, thank you for sharing that. So next, I'd love to talk with you about AI in therapy. So there's a growing conversation about AI in therapy. So where do you see promise, and also, are there places that you see risk as well?
Yes, I mean, AI is such a hot topic here in the Bay Area, and
Mm-hmm.
I do think AI is opening the doors for people to learn to communicate to something anonymous that
Uh-huh.
might be very validating and resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that opens the initial doors of, oh, I have something to express, and I might want to talk about it with someone that I don't know. And that
Right.
maybe can translate to referrals and therapists or coaches,
Mm-hmm.
um, or even resources like books or podcasts. And I think that can be helpful. And I can also see AI being very helpful in to streamlining the type of work that therapists do that get in the
Okay.
way. And that could be some administrative work, similarly to other professions like supporting with treatment plan notes or like documentation or
Right.
understanding what billing and how to put schedules more together more cohesively and quicker,
Mm-hmm.
so we can do that work well. So I think those are all like great options. But
Mm-hmm.
where it can be really dangerous is that Denise, you and I talked about like the importance of just real life conversations is what we're really having right now.
Right.
And just seeing someone's like chuckle or their eyes
Mm-hmm.
smile or they're nodding like what you're doing, that how our heart opens of like, oh, there's
Right.
someone here and they're listening and I'm feeling seen and heard. And although the conversations with AI bots can mimic that, it is not that humanist connection that we all may crave and need. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think that it opens an opportunity. But I do hope that these AI companies are responsible and
Right.
diligent into when these conversations become quite sensitive, and
Mm-hmm.
that a bot is not going to be the person, their individual or the product at the end of the day, going to be supportive for someone's, very sensitive and vulnerable conversations.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. And, thank you so much for your time today. I had such a wonderful time talking with you. I had, learned so much from you. But just as we're wrapping up, I'd love to talk, end on the note of hope. So, what's possible in the future of healing that gives you hope right now?
Oh, I I think that we've gone through so much in the last like decade with
Okay.
mental health. Means the political divide, the divisiveness,
Right.
the scarcity of connection, and the
Mm-hmm.
perception of connection with internet. And I mean, living through a pandemic. And what makes me hopeful is that it feels like folks are more and more open to gathering,
Mm.
um, and that brings
Right.
me hope. I think people are looking for whimsy and
Mm.
playfulness and lightheartedness. And I think that brings me a lot of hope, where we don't have to take things so seriously when things are so serious at
Right.
times. And that
Uh-huh.
we can hold the dualities of I can do serious work and I can hold myself with gentle hands and a lighthearted lens where I can just be rather than do and produce and analyze. And that brings me a
Right.
lot of hope and inspiration.
No, I love that. It reminds me too, because I'm actually working on building my own YouTube channel. And I've noticed that too. Like, people are more drawn to the fun kind of content and, just
Yes.
like looking at me walking around community, just video, recording Vegas or whatever. But like, then they're more willing to like look at my more serious content. But I think as a content creator, that's what I'm thinking too. I'm like, I think people are just burned out. There's a lot going on in the world right now that I just want to, put more of that joy. Like, the serious content I think could come later or hopefully like when people could come around. But I think right now
Yeah.
people are just wanting joy and laughter right now, though.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, we have to feel safe before we go deep. And I think that's
Right.
what you're doing, right? Like you're playing around with what works for you and might be building that audience of like, this is who I am, this is how I live, and this is where my heart is, this is where my mind
Right.
goes sometimes.
Right. No, thank you again. You're doing such wonderful and beautiful work. But just lastly, how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you or learn more about your work?
Yes, so my website is michellevaux.lcsw.com, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where people can learn about my specialties, collaborations I've done with different type of networks. And on Instagram, I occasionally post here and there, but not much.
Okay.
But model mindfulness. I always look at other really inspiring therapists and content creators in the wellness space there too.
Okay.
But thank you so much for having me, and I hope to stay connected and allowing me
Yeah.
more space to just sharing what I do.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing parts of your journey and story and again, expertise. And I truly hope that we could stay connected as well. Like I think that we really need to build an ecosystem and like find different ways to support each other because I feel like we're working in different fields, doing
Mhm.
different things. But I think we all have, or at least that's what I'm envisioning, that we're just working together to create like a more beautiful world together, though. So that's why I think it's important for us to like find each other and connect with each other, like share both our triumphs as well as challenges with each other. But yeah,
Yes, I would love
yeah, yeah. No, thank you again, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye. Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
feel so mad and sad and bad, I say to myself, relax, lean back, it's a brand new day. And every time I feel so down that a frown